This is Curative Design, and I'm Arun Matthews. In the first of a two-part series about the world of D.A. Henderson and variola major, we discussed the role a seemingly simple innovation played in helping to eradicate smallpox. However, I believe that a second innovation was necessary to eradicate this disease, an innovation in process. You see, the science of epidemiology, or public health, is the science of tracking diseases in populations, in this case, smallpox. Stepping back in time, the task was simple. The WHO simply had to vaccinate at a rate faster than the disease could spread. If done effectively, this would result in something called herd immunity, which essentially means that outbreaks become limited to the individuals in the herd that did not have the vaccination. Those that did would form a protective barrier of sorts around those that weren't vaccinated. The notion of herd immunity is a fascinating mathematical model that can be seen in nature, and hence the term herd after studying populations of animals and the patterns of disease transference associated with animals living in close proximity to one another. As a result, the need to vaccinate entire populations of animals was not necessary, saving on limited resources of vaccine and vaccinators. And yet, despite being armed with this knowledge, earlier efforts to curb the disease failed at the cost of many millions of well-intentioned dollars. We needed a new model. This is where the work of D.A. Henderson and his successor, Dr. Bill Foege, came into play. In truth, while the concept of herd immunity removed the need to immunize absolutely everyone in a community, it still required approximately 90% of the community to be immunized. What Henderson and Foege devised was a much leaner strategy of disease containment, referred to as ring vaccination. In effect, at the first reports of a new outbreak, teams would descend on an area and attempt to identify the index or near-index cases, setting up a perimeter around those individuals and their families. They would then vaccinate outwards in concentric rings, effectively attempting to contain the spread of the disease by creating human barriers of immunized individuals. Henderson and Foege then developed and perfected the complementary idea of surveillance and containment, in which a network of individuals would constantly monitor township clinics for any new cases and once again activate ring vaccination should new cases be identified. This, in conjunction with ring vaccination, reduced the total burden of vaccination from the herd immunity targets of 90+% to as little as 7%, a true breakthrough in process. It was this much leaner process that took the gargantuan task of vaccinating the world and containing the spread of the disease out of the realms of fantasy and into the worlds of limited budgets, resources, political strife, and competing initiatives, that is, the world of global public health. It was Henderson, working in conjunction with Foege, that connected the dots between these two concepts, the bifurcated needle and the concept of surveillance and containment with ring vaccination. And the results spoke for themselves. Smallpox was but a memory. It would be naive and reductive to state that other factors didn't also play into the perfect storm that was smallpox eradication. Foege himself writes that these included 1. The belief that the eradication of a disease was even a possibility, 2. The presence of global coordinating bodies such as the United Nations and the WHO, 3. Post-World War II trade agreements, and 4. The fact that vaccine development had progressed to the point that developing nations where smallpox was endemic could stockpile their own reserves of vaccine. This is true. However, I also believe that the wheels of groundbreaking change often require a singular, decisive vision to be set in motion, and that vision came from none other than D.A. Henderson. The problem with memories, however, is that they fade. Until things run through a media cycle or we directly experience something ourselves or through those that we love, we tend to minimize the lessons learned from our prior generations. If you were to ask me the things in medical science that I consider miraculous, I would list them as such in no particular order. A. Vaccination, for literally allowing us to keep the forces of pestilence from culling the human race needlessly. B. Antibiotics, for much the same, but also laying the groundwork for the innovation known as surgery. C. Anesthesia, without which surgery would just revert to simple butchery from whence it came. And D. Aseptic technique, once again for making surgery a worthwhile and noble pursuit, supported by the concepts of anesthesia and antibiotics. Perhaps the only thing that surprises me more than the astounding ability of our species to innovate, and in fact innovate these amazing things that I just stated, is the astounding ability for us to forget the struggles of our generations past, the very reasons we needed to innovate in the first place. When I read of intelligent individuals choosing to do things like forego vaccination, and perhaps worse yet, making these decisions for their children, it concerns me greatly. But in my experience, education and outreach are more powerful agents for change than finger-pointing and elitism. Part of the reason for developing this series of essays lay in highlighting the amazing work done by scientists, engineers, writers, and artists in years gone by. Sometimes it is helpful to recount their stories in helping us to realize that they too were just like us, fragile human beings living in uncertain times on a fragile, beautiful planet. Seeking order within complex, disparate systems is what seems to act as a common thread through all these stories. And the beauty of healthcare is that it is complex, multidisciplinary, and just waiting to have ideas from other fields integrated, dissected, and absorbed into it. So, if you find yourself working on some sort of quality improvement project that brings people from different disciplines together, no matter how big or how small, I like to think that D.A. Henderson would have approved. This is Curative Design, and I'm Arun Matthews.